Hey, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Becoming No One podcast. This is episode 5 in our Atlantis Lemurian series. Today, we start the conversation about Lemuria. Okay, Lemuria and Mu are actually the same place, and we'll start a little bit talking about Atlantis. We'll start talking about what they knew, what they hid from us, and what we actually need to know right now about Atlantis and why it's important for us to know it right now. This comes as a part of a live series that I was doing last month and the month before. I'm posting it on the podcast because it is pivotal information. I feel like it's just something that we should be sharing, especially since people love the podcast, and the podcast is supposed to be a space where we're growing and evolving together. So I really hope you guys love this episode. I will be live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube and on TikTok. My TikTok is BIGTAJJJ. My YouTube is BIGTAJJ. I hope to see y'all there. Let me know how y'all feel about this episode. Happy healing, friends. Okay. So I got one tomorrow. Okay. Hey y'all, and happy Wednesday. No, I think I want to keep it where it is. Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. Today we're gonna start talking about Lemuria and Atlantis, which I'm really excited about. Hey, Sister Treats. I'm really excited about because I feel like every episode that we've done up until this point has been building to this. Hey, Leah. Hold on, let me raise this up a little bit, y'all, so I can see y'all. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Hey D, hey Sean. So I feel like all of the episodes that we've done up until this point have been leading to this point to start the conversation on Atlantis, and it's just way too much to cover in one episode. So I'm gonna kind of break this into parts, and then we're gonna talk about little small, not little, but like more random spiritual concepts and stuff that we need to understand just in general with us navigating this reality. Hey DeMarco. So I'm really excited about today's episode. I want to give a second for a little bit more people to come on. So in the interim, please keep in mind on Sunday, I have a spiritual intelligence protection class that's coming up. It is going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which I think is 11 Central, 12 Eastern time. And that will have a lot of focus on what's happening in the dream time. Okay. So if you are having dreams where you feel like you're being chased or all of those things, that'll be the class for you. I think it's $77. 7 is the number of spiritual awareness. So that'll be available on my website until Saturday night, and then Sunday morning it'll probably be taken off. But yeah, so that'll be coming up on Sunday. I'm excited to teach that course because I feel like a lot of us need it right now, and there's a lot of things happening in a dream time right now. And a lot of people are freaking out because of it. And I just want to make sure that y'all prepared and y'all know how to protect yourself wherever y'all are, whether in matter or spirit. Happy birthday, D. So yeah. Oh, good. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be informative, but it's also going to give you some applicable things that you can do into your day-to-day life to kind of help get you into a spiritual practice, and kind of help you to protect yourself both in the physical and in the spiritual. So that'll be exciting. I am going to lock my hair up on this weekend, which I'm excited about too. I've been wanting locks for such a long time. So I just finally said, fuck it. And I'm going to lock it up. I at first was going to go with like sister locks, like smaller locks, because I love that look, but I might be a less than 100 type of girl. So we'll see. Okay. All right. Well, it's 1:02. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This will be on my YouTube for those people who come in late. And remember that I'll only be answering questions through my Patreon Soul Tribe tier. So if you have questions, they'll be there, but I won't be answering questions in the chat just because it's too distracting. All right. So today, like I said, we're going to start the conversation on Atlantis and Lemuria. So what we'll kind of need to talk about, or like the framework, the overview, the summary. the first part is going to be like what was going on before Lemuria, which is what we call the first Earth dream. We'll talk about like the beings that existed there, that type of thing. Then we'll move into Lemuria and Mu, which are basically the same civilizations. We'll talk about what their purpose were, why they were created. We'll talk about the edenic frequency, which is Eden. We'll talk about the beings that existed there. And then we'll also talk about why Atlantis needed to be created, what its purpose was. We won't talk all the way about the fallen stuff just because I want to talk about like their structure, their leaders, like that type of thing first before we talk about like why it fell. But I'm still going to mention it just because I feel like it would be incomplete if I didn't mention it. And then we'll talk about like whether or not our government agencies know and stuff like that, because they do. And what we basically need to know about Atlantis and why that's important right now, why Lemuria is important right now, what's coming back online, that whole thing. Okay. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what was happening before Lemuria. And this is what we call the root races or the first Earth dream. Before Lemuria, Earth was actually a host to earlier phase of beings. So they don't look how humans would look right now. They're sometimes called the Polarian epoch, which is the first race. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Sometimes it is called the Polarian epoch, which is the first root race, and then the Hyperborean age or the primordial light of Earth. And during this time, what was really happening, Earth was less dense than it is right now, meaning like it had not taken its full material form. It was vibrating higher, so it was actually existing between the 4D and 7D frequencies. Beings who either visited Earth or were seated on Earth were pure light forms. They were sound beings, they were dragonoid elders, or they were plasma-bodied architects, meaning like they were helping Earth to transition from this stage of being mainly light to more solid forms. Hi, SLC. So the beings that basically helped to shape Earth's original geometry, magnetic field, and elemental grid were the beings who were basically here during that first Earth before Lemuria, like the first civilizations. Okay. You can think of them as like cosmic gardeners, template weavers, or like stellar midwives. Okay. This era was pre-duality. So duality did not actually exist in that first part. Hey, AJ. It didn't exist in that first part, okay? This was before polarity fully emerged in this reality. It was more about the harmonic seeding and not learning through contrast at that time, because where we are now with polarity consciousness is that we have to learn through contrast. Like we need something to compare it to. Whereas before it wasn't like that. Everything kind of lived in harmony. Okay. So that was before Lemuria. That's the root races. Okay. And then we get Lemuria or Mu to come along. And this is the first embodied dream of Earth, meaning embodiment. Okay. Physicality. Now, Lemuria was a foundational Earth dream. This was the first embodiment of divine harmony, and it served a specific purpose in the greater unfolding of Earth's evolutionary path, meaning that when Lemuria was seeded or when it was being built, it was not being built with the understanding that it was going to stay. It was meant to set the foundation for something, but something greater needed to unfold later on. So Lemuria didn't really fall. It served its purpose. Okay. So it was the first template. It was the first temple, and it was considered to be one temple instead of multiple temples, which when we talk about Atlantis, that'll make more sense. Okay. But it was the womb of divine Earth. It was Earth's original harmonic civilization in a place where we were experiencing heart-based consciousness, union with Earth, nature spirits, and star wisdom, intuitive guidance over mental reasoning, meaning like we weren't having that split between consciousness. There's a reason why there's a difference between what we think and what we feel in our heart, right? Because there was a split that happened. But before that happened in Lemuria, that wasn't in existence. Okay. People were just intuitive. Okay. There was also a deep communion with water, with whales, with womb wisdom, with sound, and with crystalline light, because we were just coming from Earth being more of a light matrix than anything. Okay. So it began to hold embodied or soul evolving life in Lemuria. So the Lemurians were more etheric, they were softer, they were multi-dimensional species. They were intimately linked with the stars, with the water, and with Earth's soul body. Not fully physical, they had like these lightly dense bodies, which were often described as tall and glowing and fluid. And they also were either androgynous, meaning like you couldn't tell if they were male or female, or they leaned more towards the feminine tone. Okay. They were able to communicate through telepathy, through sound currents, through empathic resonance, and through dreaming, meaning like they did not open their mouth to speak. I don't even know if they had mouths, to be honest. But everything was done through telepathy or sound currents or empathic resonance, which means that everything was done kind of through energy. Okay. They were deeply connected to the whales, the dolphins, the dragons, the elemental spirits. They were spiritually evolved, but still exploring the mysteries of embodiment, meaning like this is the first time that they came into physicality. Okay. They were still exploring creation and Earth's emotional field. They were not human, but they were a bridge between starlight and form. So like heaven and earth, they were like a bridge between those two things. Some were seeded from Sirius B, which is the water and the sound masters. Hey, Nydia. Some were seeded from Lyra, which are divine architectures. Some were seeded from Andromeda, and Andromeda has the dream seers or the timeline weavers. And some were seeded from Venus. And Venus are the keepers of the rose flame and sacred union. So divine union, beauty, harmony, all of that stuff comes from Venus. So the people who were considered to be the Lemurians were star people. They Sirius B, Lyra, Andromeda, or Venus. Okay. And those are not planets, or they're like frequency bands, if that makes sense. They're planes of existence. They're like resonances, if that makes sense. The purpose of the Lemurians was to infuse Earth with living love and to begin anchoring the divine aspect of source into the physical form. And when I say that divine aspect of source, source is love. Okay. So some of the beings that were around at the time of Lemuria still live on Earth, but just inner Earth. Okay. They also live in the dream realms, and some of them are soul-braided guides for people who are awakening now. So I had somebody reach out to me, and she was talking about dream time and how she was having a dream in the water, and she's seen a translucent looking being next to her. And I was like, oh, that's probably a Lemurian. And she probably has some ties to the Lemurian mu codes because she was under the water. Okay. So it was a environment that kind of lived in harmony. Okay. I'm not taking anybody in the chat, y'all. So some of the beings still live in inner Earth. Some of the beings still live in inner Earth, dream realm, and then some are just coming back right now. They're deeply advanced in emotional intelligence, in harmonic frequency, and in soul communion. Okay, so that was what their gifts were. Now, Lemuria itself was not built to conquer, or it was not being built to build structure. Its purpose was to anchor in the frequency of Eden, okay, to infuse Earth with the remembrance of unconditional love and soul coherence. So it was not a school of learning like Earth is now. It was just a field of being. Now, we talked about the Eden codes before, but I just want to remind y'all briefly, since we're talking about it right now. Eden was a frequency of original alignment. It existed before polarity and the fall in density happened. And Earth was designed to be a living library, a soul garden, and a sacred harmonic womb. So Eden is a frequency band that was 5D and above, where all life lived in union. Okay. A time, a place, a dimension where human star beings, elemental spirits, and soul essences moved in communion. It was a state of being not defined by geography, but by energetic harmony. Okay. There was no shame in the Edenic frequency. There was no veil in between worlds, meaning like you was his spirit and matter at the same time. Okay. There was no separation from the body, from Earth, or the divine. It was a love field, which we called home. Okay. A home for all. is what the Edenic field was. Okay. Some of the ancient names that are still used for these Edenic codes are Lemuria, Mu, Avalon, Dolman, Tula, the Dreaming Lands, which is used by indigenous people, or the First World, which is also used by indigenous people. Okay. But what they're talking about is Lemuria. They're talking about Mu. Okay. These are not legends, but localized expressions of this Edenic frequency, which was anchored by those who still carry these codes today. Okay. Now, the fall of Eden was a frequency collapse. It was not punishment or sin like we have been taught. It was about the loss of vibrational coherence. Over time, Earth took on a denser form, meaning it became more material. And the reason why it had to become more material is because it was allowing souls to explore polarity and separation and self-remembrance, which means you had to go away from yourself to figure out who you were to come back to yourself, right? So as that started to happen, we just fell out of vibrational coherence with that frequency, and shame and fear and control started to enter in our field, because that's what you start to experience when you're in this place of separation. Okay. So Eden didn't disappear. It just simply became invisible to those who could no longer hold the frequency. And I'm going to explain to y'all why this is important later on. Okay. But it is still alive with us right now. Okay. So people who crave a world of peace, of truth, of sacred union, who remember a time when Earth sang back to us, who feel grief without necessarily knowing why they feel grief, like something perfect was lost, people who experience moments where everything feels connected again, even for a brief moment. This is actually you feeling these codes be reactivated. Okay. So the Edenic frequency didn't go anywhere. You can tap into it right now. It was never meant to succeed, though, so it didn't technically fall. It fulfilled its part of Earth's mission. Okay, so if it held the original codes of divine feminine balance, and when the Earth was ready to evolve into a denser layer of experiences, it seeded the water memory, it seeded the crystalline grid framework, and it also seeded the soul blueprint for unity consciousness. Okay, so Lemuria didn't really disappear. It withdrew, it submerged, and it hid within Earth's crystalline memory, waiting for souls to bring it back as the frequency rose again. Okay, it's a way of being, and it's a blueprint for unity that is already here. Okay, so if you are drawn to Lemuria, you may carry womb codes of the first harmony. You may have come here because you're meant to weave the heart back into the mind. Okay, because Lemuria, think of Lemuria as the heart. Think of Atlantis as the mind. We fucked up when we got out of the heart into the mind, but we were meant to go through this because Earth needed to evolve. And sometimes you don't know what you need to evolve towards until you evolve towards the opposite. Okay, so think of Lemuria as like the heart. You're not here to go back, though, to Lemuria. We're here to kind of restore the balance through the body and the voice. So we need to kind of bring these things back into balance. Okay. And that's why we're kind of having this conversation right now. Now, Atlantis was the next phase. Atlantis was thought being brought into form. Okay. So if Lemuria was the heart, Atlantis was meant to be the mind in balance with the heart. Atlantis was created to take the love of Lemuria and shape it into technology, into systems, and into sacred structures. Okay, it created a bridge between the higher star knowledge and the embodied human experience. That's why I say Atlantis went across 5 harmonics. It wasn't just one thing. It was a vibration that we were all carrying, and it wasn't all of the world, like the world that we know it today. It wasn't all of it, which I'm gonna explain in just a second. Okay, so we were meant to explore the laws of manifestation. We were meant to explore polarity, and we were meant to explore soul alchemy. Okay, so those are the things that Atlantis was supposed to give us. But without the continued integration of the Lemurian heart codes, meaning we fell out of coherence, Atlantis started to slowly tilt towards imbalance. So it was too much mind and not enough soul, which we can see that in the people that is here. Okay, it was too much mind and not enough soul. Okay, Atlantis did not happen because Lemuria failed, though. It was the next spiral in Earth's consciousness, because we talk about we're always spiraling upwards. It's really not upwards, it's inwards. We're always spiraling inwards. Okay. Atlantis was this next step. So let's talk about Atlantis in greater detail. Okay. Atlantis is more than just a lost civilization or a mythical continent. Atlantis is a vibration. It's a state of consciousness, and it's a template woven into soul memory of many of us who still walk today, which means it's in your DNA. It's not a place outside of you. You are the place. Okay. What does it mean that Atlantis is a frequency? It means it's a vibration that you can tune into, like a radio station that carries ancient wisdom and advanced knowledge and crystalline energy and high heart consciousness, which actually comes from your thymus gland. Okay. It lives in your cells. It's not just history. And for many people, remembering Atlantis isn't about archaeology. It's about resonance. It's about making sure that you're at the proper frequency so that you're able to hold the light that is Atlantis. Okay. You feel it in your bones. You see it in your dreams, in water, in light codes. And I've seen it in my dreams, and the water looks like something I've never seen before in my life. If I had to compare it to something, it would be Hawaii or Fiji, where the water is so clear and so blue. It's almost like you can see everything in the water. Like that's what it looks like. And all of its structures are built out of sand, but it's kind of like speckled. We'll get there. Okay. But it's beautiful. You can reach it in your dream realm if you reach the right resonance. Okay. And everything in life is about resonance. Okay. So, but it's also a echo of time when spirit and science were one thing, because science is just trying to explain spirituality. You know, religion is just trying to explain spirituality through one lens. Everything in life is spiritual because spirit is frequency. That's it. Hey, Divine Links, spirit is frequency. There is no separation between the two. It's just that we try to use our logical mind to explain that. And that is where the issue started to come in. Okay. Because we became more left brain than right brain. We got out of the heart and we got into the mind. Okay. So Atlantis is a mirror because Atlantis fell, and that frequency still contains both the rise and the fall and the choice to rise again differently, which is why we're doing this. This is why we're having this conversation. Okay. Coffee break. Hey, Aries. So why was Atlantis created? It was created as a harmonic experiment in divine embodiment. It was a template of heaven on earth. So you know how they say heaven on earth? That is a echo from Atlantis. That is us remembering Atlantis. Okay. It was meant to be a living school of consciousness, remembering itself. We were meant to dream while we were awake, which means you have to be conscious because it's supposed to be a lucid dream, not an unconscious dream. But so many of us are moving through life unconsciously and not in an aware state. Okay. So there was a couple things that Atlantis was meant to do. The first thing was anchor in higher dimensional consciousness into matter. So it was a divine project between Earth's oversoul and various star collectives, which is Sirius, Pleiades, Lyra, Venus, and beyond. Okay, the goal was to bring 5D to 12D frequencies into physical form so that the soul could experience creation and beauty and spiritual evolution through embodiment. You know, and embodiment is the only place where you actually can feel the full spectrum of emotions. And in higher realms, you only experience love. But in these lower realms, you're able to experience the full spectrum, right? So we came here to experience sound frequency, emotional frequency. We came here to experience those things. But the problem is that we don't understand that. We forgot and we got trapped in it. Okay. Atlantis was a bridge between the stars and the earth, a place for you to learn, for you to remember, for you to express divine intelligence in form. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it acted as a living crystal grid. So it wasn't just land, it was a living light map. It was made of crystals, of sound harmonics, and sacred geometry. It was a crystal city, which we'll talk about in a second. Its temples were frequency regulators, helping balance Earth's shifting polarities And it was also a guardian of stargates and planetary timelines linking Earth to other realms, which many of those are still here today. That's what they fighting over all the time in them wars. The third thing was it was meant to be a multi-dimensional mystery school, a place where advanced souls could train in the sacred arts, work with the elementals and angelic and star frequencies, because the angels, the angelic energy, we could work with that here. Okay. The elemental energy, the star frequency, they was all we were meant to be able to create from anything, like be one with the creator. Okay. It was meant to serve Earth's evolution through sound, through DNA healing, through flame activation. And it was meant to be a utopia. It was meant to be a living experiment in remembering divinity inside of limitations, because we don't got limitations outside of this reality. So in linear time, or in Earth years, the earliest roots for Atlantis began 200,000 years ago in energetic architecture and the Lemurian handoff. That's kind of when that happened. Atlantis, as we know it, began to take major form 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, becoming a beacon in the Atlantic Ocean. It existed through many phases, though, with cycles of rising, fracturing, and reformation as well. But in the energetic timeline, Atlantis was created at the moment that Earth was ready to hold a 5D plus frequency in a stable form. Hi, Mecca. And this aligned with the golden age in Earth's prehistory. So an epoch of harmony between land, water, stars, soul. Everything was in alignment. So in essence, Atlantis was seated before time, but manifested when the collective frequency allowed it to. Because everything happens in spirit first. Everything happens as a frequency first. When they say everything happens in spirit first, that's what they mean. Everything happens in a frequency first, and then it manifests, because this is the realm of the phenomenon. Okay? Which means all of the causes come from the noumenon. They come from energy first, and then they come into physical form, and then they manifest in physical form. Okay? It lasted for tens of thousands of years in different phases. Most sources, both intuitive and ancient, agree that the golden age of Atlantis lasted from 10,000 to 15,000 years. After that, distortion began, and it was gradual at first, then it became more intense. And the final fall or implosion of it dated to 12,000, 11,000 years before, years ago, around 9,600 BCE. Hey, Smiley. And it correlated with massive geological events and sea level rises. Okay. So it fell because the dream of divine embodiment collided with ego, imbalance, and technological misuse. Hey, Dream Life Creator. So ego, imbalance, and technological misuse. Okay. It was a crystal city. Exactly, Mecca. It was a crystal city. And it was often described in other spiritual teachings, other channelings, as being a crystal city, both metaphorically, but also literally. But when I say crystal city, I don't want you to think that the city looked like a crystal, because that's not what it looked like to me. But you can tell that crystal energy is there because everything looks kind of shimmery, if that makes sense. Like a glare is coming off of it, if it makes sense. And there's certain things that look like undoubtedly, it is a crystal. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Shira. So it was a crystal city, both metaphorically and literally. Crystals were the core of its power, its memory, its technology. They weren't just decorations. They were alive, they were conscious, and they were deeply integrated into the fabric of Atlantean life. So temples were built from crystalline structures. Energy was harnessed through massive crystal grids, and healing was performed using sound like crystal combinations. Okay. Some called it fire crystal or the Blu-ray crystals. But it was what powered the entire civilization. right? So the thing that you may wonder is like, well, then how did it, if Atlantis was a vibration, like how did it connect to Earth? Like what was the connection to Earth if it wasn't all the way physical, but it also wasn't all the way spiritual? It was kind of like this in between, right? So Atlantis was a mirror between heaven and earth, and it was seeded from higher harmonic planes. So fifth dimensional and above, but it was designed to anchor into Earth's field through crystal frequencies, through sacred geometry, which is light, by the way that light forms itself, and living consciousness. So it connected to Earth by overlaying grid points on the planetary body. So the ley lines, the stargates, the song lines. And that's why I needed to do the grid episode before we even got to this, so that y'all could understand what I was saying later on, right? So it was connected through grid points. Also, imprinting temples and tech that allowed us to imprint things onto physical land masses that are now, some of them are submerged or fragmented. Okay. And also using ocean portals to link Earth's water to the higher dimensional waters. And this is what we call the waters of Nu, or the cosmic womb, or the waters above. Yeah. So Atlantis was connected to Earth through the water as well. Water is basically like a bridge. So water is a dimensional membrane, and it's not just a substance, it's a gate, it's a transmuter or transmitter, and it's a recorder of memory. So in Atlantis, the temples were often built on or beneath the water to interface between realms. So when they say the ocean has portals, yeah, you're not wrong in that. You're not wrong in that at all. I think space is down instead of up, right? You're not wrong in that at all. Okay. Now, obelisk and crystal pylons were placed in the water to conduct energy into Earth's crystalline grid. So one time I was getting a download, and they kept talking to me about the obelisk and how the obelisks were placed at the wrong place. And they took me to New York, where they have Cleopatra's Needle in Central Park, and they kept on saying the obelisks need to go back to where they came from. And they told me that some of them were buried and some of them are like in the ocean, but like tilted over in the ocean, like they not they sank them on purpose, but they moved them down or whatever. They need to come back up. So then they showed me an aerial view of what I would consider to be Atlantis, based off of, I don't know how I know it's Atlantis, but I just know when I'm at Atlantis because it just looks different. And so they showed me like an aerial view, and it almost looked like I was in a plane above it, and it was a bunch of obelisks sticking out of the water, and it was dolphins like in the air. You can see the dolphins below. So obelisks played a big part in Atlantis. And you know how, I don't know if y'all remember, but a couple years ago, there was these random obelisks appearing everywhere. And they actually found one in the Grand Canyon, and they basically, somebody posted it on TikTok or the internet or something like that. And then the government sanctioned off that area, and then all of a sudden it was gone. Do y'all remember that? I remember that. So obelisks play a big part because they conduct energy into Earth's crystalline grid. Okay. And then also whales and dolphins were used as living transmitters. They're sonic beings that could phase through dimensions. Now, that's also interesting because I just posted a video not too long ago about this guy who was basically talking about, he had a vision, or not a vision, but he had a dream that where dolphins came to him in a mermaid-like being and told him he was from the water. He got in the water, they did some sonic healing on him, and then one of the dolphins like let him ride on his back, and they went to this place that was a portal in the ocean, and he said the dolphin was teaching him how to go through the portal, and he saw the dolphin spirit go through first, and the body just was kind of laying there, and then it was trying to get him to do the same thing. Dolphins are guardians. They're not just animals. That's why there's federal laws keeping us away from talking to them, because they telepathic as well. And not only that, if you give birth by a dolphin, you won't feel any fear. I mean, you won't feel any pain. They're sonic beings. Okay. That's neither here nor there, though. Okay. So the ocean we see now holds the residue, the memory, and even submerged technology of Atlantis. In some places like the Bermuda Triangle, the Azores, or parts of Antarctica, because Antarctica is actually Earth's womb, which is a whole nother story. The architecture is still active in some of those places. But the thing is that they're either dormant or they're cloaked, which there's something cloaked in the Bermuda Triangle for sure. I've known that my whole life, which I'm gonna talk about in a second. But they're either dormant or they're cloaked. Okay. Now the land may be gone, but the frequency itself remains. Some of Atlantis may have sunk, but the true city was never just on the surface. Parts of it phased into higher realms. Some temples were pulled into inner earth, and certain flame chambers and crystal vaults still exist beneath the ocean floor in vibration, waiting for reactivation. And this is why many of us are being called to water or to the ocean in our dreams. Many of us are starting to feel like we're mourning things that we've never lived before, because your soul memory is responding to a frequency that still lives beneath the waves. And these oceanic grids are coming back online right now. Okay, so Atlantis, like I said, was not fully physical, but it touched Earth's body through energy, through water, and through grid alignment. Its temples were made of light and form. So sometimes visible, sometimes it was etheric though. And the ocean holds gateways, not just to the past, but to the return of those frequencies. The physical parts of Atlantis were on specific land masses, though. It's set between Africa, the Americas, and Europe. But it was connected to every single sacred site that we know on Earth today. It was connected to those sacred sites through the crystalline grid that we talked about in the last episode. Okay, so Egypt, the Yucatan, the Andes, Tibet, Australia, the Pacific Islands, all were a part of the Atlantean sphere, even if they had unique names and functions as well. So think of it not as one country, but a global harmonic field anchored through crystal temples, obelisks and portals, sound lines and ley lines, and beings who served in different regions but were unified in purpose. Remember, because I said we're like walking energy grid points, right? So it's connected through us as well. At the time, Earth was not called Earth, though. There was a couple different names. And the reason why I'm going to give you the names is because these names hold frequency. So they can help you to re-tap into that energy. Earth was a name that happened after the fall. And it's tied more to our linear understanding of the planet than this cyclical nature of the planet. Okay, Atlantis was called by many names, and it basically was reflective of the living intelligence that was Earth, because Earth was not just considered to Atlanteans as a body, it was a being. Okay, it was a being. So Atlantis wasn't really called Atlantis, it was called Atlantara. It was called Atlantara. Okay, but Earth itself was called Iara. So E''Ara, Iara, and that stands for the breathing one. It referred to the living, sentient aspect of the planet, the one who sings through stone and sea. Stone is crystal. The one who sings through stone and sea. Then another common one, because these first two ones are actually from the original Earth frequencies, okay? And the other one is Tamari, okay? So Tamar''E, Tamari, the mother of the waters and the stars, used in Lemuria and early Atlantean timelines. It emphasized her role as the cosmic mother. These first two names come from the original Earth, and they come from the edenic frequencies. Yes, DeAndrea. Yes, my love. Okay. Other names would be Shalem and Te, Shalem and Te, which means temple of light within form, a name used in the high priesthoods to refer to the frequency structure of Earth's grid system. Other names are going to be Gaia, which is post-Atlantean Greek language, Tiamat, which is Sumerian lineage, Ankara, which is the star-born tongue for beloved flame body of creation, star people, Ankara. Each name reflects a different dimensional relationship that we had with Earth. Okay, so she went by many names. Now, the Atlanteans saw Earth as separate than them. They did not see Earth as an object. They sang to it. They vibrated with it. And they referred to it in tones. And these are often 3-syllable harmonics that can't really be written. They can only be felt. Okay. So that's how Atlantis was connected to Earth. So what have we talked about? We talked about what the purpose of Atlantis was, right? Why it had to be created. We talked about Atlantis as a frequency. We talked about how long it lasted. We talked about it being a crystal city. We talked about how it connected to the physical world. Now we're going to talk about the structure of Atlantis and its leaders. Okay. So Atlantis did have a structure, but it was not like hierarchy like we know it today. There is a hierarchy though in our understanding, but it just didn't work how our hierarchies work, if that makes sense. But this is only in the golden age, because when ego came into the picture, there did become hierarchy, and that type of stuff was introduced later on in the timeline. Okay. So there was a council of flame or flame holders. And that was at the highest vibrational tier. That's where they said the council of flame, the council of flame holders. And they were not above, but within the heart of the civilization. They were basically the flame holders. These were high priestesses and priests who embodied the living flame. So the rose flame, the crystal flame, the solar flame, the emerald flame. Okay. They were chosen by, not by birthright, but by soul resonance and crystalline embodiment, which means that they were birthed for specific reasons, if that makes sense. Okay. They were birthed for specific reasons. So that's the goal. That's the role that they played, was the specific reason, because when they were birthed out of those things, it was soul resonance. Like that, we needed that specific resonance for that specific job, if that makes sense. Okay. So it wasn't about birthright or anything like hierarchy like we understand it today. It was more so about you vibrated at the right resonance, so you do this job. And it was also about embodiment, crystalline embodiment. Okay. They were keepers of divine law, frequency balance, and portal technology. They held sacred responsibilities. With these sacred responsibilities, it did not mean that you had power over other people. It just means that you held specific responsibilities based on what job or function you served in society, or what purpose you served in society. Okay. Many of these beings were multidimensional. They were partly Earth and partly from somewhere else. They were partly on Earth and partly somewhere else as well, because that's what it means to be multidimensional. Okay. So they're multidimensional beings. So that is the highest vibrational tier of government. That would be the Council of Flame and the Flame Holders. Then you have the Circle of Temples, which I told you Atlantis had a multitude of different temples. So the Circle of Temples was surrounding the central crystalline city. Okay. Surrounding the central crystalline city was a lot of temples, and each were dedicated to a specific flame or a specific function. So the Circle of Temples were like the next vibrational frequency. So you had the Temple of Healing, which was the emerald flame. You had the Temple of Sound and Time, which was the amethyst flame. You had the Temple of Creation, which was the rose flame. You had the Temple of Knowledge, which was the sapphire flame. You had the Temple of the Sun, which was the solar flame. And you had the Temple of the Waters, which was the pearl flame. And each temple had a priestess or a priest circle, who were beings who had been trained from childhood. They had initiates or apprentices in training. They had guardians, and these were often masculine coded in service to the feminine principle, because Atlantis was a feminine principled society. Okay. even though they fell underneath the solar flame. They were a feminine principled society, okay, because that's how you bring the balance into the equation. And then the dolphins and the whales were emissaries who acted as living conduits of planetary wisdom. Okay, so we worked with the dolphins and the whales. All right, so that's the second level. And then you have the citizens of harmonic roles, which means that the citizens were also a part of this hierarchy system. Even though it wasn't a hierarchy, everybody just served a specific function. Okay, so you had the Atlantean society, which wasn't like structured around status or wealth or control, but it was like either you had a vibrational calling or you didn't. Okay, people who are recognized for their frequency signature, not their appearance or their possessions. And some of the roles included the grid workers, which we talked about in the last couple of episodes ago. So the grid workers who maintained the planetary crystalline grid, the dream seers who navigated timelines and helped guide choices, the crystal engineers who were working with living technology. You had the artisans who created sound and color in sacred structures. You had the womb keepers who were responsible for birthing and guiding new souls into incarnation. You had the star envoys who maintain relationships with other dimensional civilizations. And there was no lower class or anything in this golden era. Every soul had a role that was sacred. Okay. The hierarchy was based on resonance, not based on status like we see it today. It was based on how much light and divine remembrance one could embody and stabilize. Okay. Think of it like music. The flame holders were the conductors guiding the symphony. The temple initiates were like musicians. The citizens were the chorus. And the dolphins and elementals were the orchestra of Earth herself. So everyone had a part of this song that was Atlantis. Power was circulated and shared through the council, through ceremonies, and through harmonic agreements. No one being controlled another being's path. So it was a place of sovereignty and free will. Okay. Leadership was held in trust, and leaders could be stepped down through resonance, not voice, meaning that not vote, meaning that they didn't vote people into leadership. Everybody had a role based off of where their frequency resonated in the amount of light that they could hold, the amount of remembrance that they could hold. But if they ever fell out of coherence with that resonance, they would be stepped down. So everything was based off of energy. So you can tell when somebody energy changed. If your energy changed, you can't do that job you was doing before until you rise back up to the occasion. Like that's how it kind of worked, not through vote, which I wish it was still built like this, because that would solve a lot of issues, right? But the reason why we need to know this is because this blueprint is returning right now. Atlantis was more of like an etheric and dreamlike frequency. Some areas operated at a 4D plus, but none of them really operated fully in 3D like we've been doing here lately. Okay. It was populated by tribal people, by advanced temple beings and ancient elemental tribes. It was hosting both organic evolution and cosmic intervention. It teetered between sovereignty and system, which means that there was a balance between the two: sovereignty and also having a structure, having a system. It was a mosaic of timelines, and Atlantis was one star point among many different timelines going on at the same time. Okay. Atlantis did have a central feminine force, though, a guardian of crystalline knowledge and a leader of the heart light. Okay. It was not a hierarchy. Like I said, everyone had a function, everyone had a role that they served, and no one was greater than the other. But there were still beings who we would consider, looking at it now, to be leaders. Okay. To be the people that the person that you go to. Okay. To be the one who is directing things. Okay. So first you had Amara, or Amarathea. She was the high priestess of all high priestess. Okay. Her name means the Lady of the Crystal Flame, meaning that she was seated from Venus, but she went through the inner earth schools. And she reached a specific resonance that no one else had reached. And so the crystal flame, which sits at the center of Atlantis, chose her by resonance to do the job. She was able to hold the most light and most remembrance for whatever that job was. Okay. She was not a ruler. She was a spiritual conduit between the earth and the stars. She was how we communed between the earth and the stars. And she held the codes of balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies. Okay. She was often seen as a tall, radiant being, cloaked in white and sapphire robes, wearing a crystal circlet that glowed with shifting frequencies, meaning that she was so aligned with the planet, like her frequency shifted with the planet's frequency. Okay. She also had 3 rings around her. And she had on a crystal gown, a crystal crown, and crystal shoes. And the crystal crown was actually gifted to her from the oceanic realms. And it actually is quite tall when you look at it. But she had a ring that kind of went behind her and then 2 rings around her feet. And her presence activated other people. Her fall or disappearance, because she didn't fall. I have her memories. She didn't fall. She left. Coincided with the fracturing of Atlantean Union. Okay. So I think I talked about Amara before, and we're going to talk about her in our next episode. We're going to talk about her in detail because I think there's just some things you just need to understand about her and the choices that she made to understand what actually happened at the fall of Atlantis. But Amara has, I think, 4,400 to 3,200 fractured embodiments right now, meaning that a lot of y'all carry her energy. A lot of y'all are, if she's the sun, because she's the oversoul, y'all are like a ray off of her. But I am her most embodied form right now. That does not make me greater or better or any of that. I just was chose for that specific role because of resonance. Okay. I rose to the occasion when I was supposed to rise to the occasion, but I am not her. If that makes sense. I have her memories, but I am not her. I am, if she had a next chapter, I am the next chapter, if that makes sense. Not saying that I'm a leader, not saying that I'm a high priest, not saying any of that. I'm just saying I hold her memories, and a lot of this is coming from memories. Okay. So we'll talk about her later on in a like deeper role, because I want to explain to y'all what the rings mean. I want to explain to y'all what the crystal gown and crown and shoes mean, because it's truly spectacular. If you didn't believe in magic, when we talk about this, you gonna believe in magic. Like, I don't think we understand how magical we are as beings, but also how magical the place that we fucking live in is, you know? So she was deeply connected to everything. And her resonance helped to harmonize everybody around her. So I think it'll just be important for us to kind of dive into that, because it's crazy when you think about it. Okay. So there was Amara. She was considered to be the high priestess. She would be considered to what we would call the queen, but she wasn't a queen or anything like that. She just had a specific role, and she was chosen by this crystal based on her resonance to keep the harmonics up of the people. Okay. So, 2, you have the council of the priests and the queens. Okay. There was like a sacred triad or a council of the wise ones, which was often women holding different aspects. So wisdom, healing, governance. But these priestesses were not worshiped. They were like guardians of Earth's star codes. Okay. They weren't beings that were worshiped. They were just helping to make sure we was in alignment type of thing. Okay. And then we also had goddess-like energy, like the Lhasa and Alcyone. And they are, one is from Syria, one is from Lyra. And these are energies connected to divine star lineages. Okay. And these lineages either come from Pleiades, Syrian, or Lemurian beings who walked in form previously. They were not queens in like human sense, but they were embodied archetypes, meaning that they fit specific archetype, like goddess-like energy, and you were meant to not worship them, but they were an example of an energy that you can embody. Okay. Now, there was a main temple in Atlantis, and it was called the Temple of the Crystal Flame. Okay. I had a vision of this once, and it looked, what's crazy is yesterday I realized what it really means to be a seer. And I realized that I'm able to tap into things when people say something and I'm not sure whether or not it's truth. when I go to sleep that night, I have a vision, I have a dream about it. And I didn't realize that until yesterday, until I was talking to spirit. And I realized that some of these things that I thought was me being attacked was me actually just tapping into the truth of what it was. I was tapping into what was not being said about whatever situation somebody was bringing up. And I didn't realize that until yesterday. Okay. Meaning that like I would hear something in my daytime, like, oh, they're trying to make contracts with us through our dreams. And then I would have a vision or dream that night showing me what actually happens, so I didn't realize that. I was focused on Atlantis for one period of time because I kept asking my guides, where am I from? And they kept saying Atlantis. And I didn't understand that because I wasn't at a level of consciousness that understood what the fuck they was talking about. I thought Atlantis was a myth, right? So during this time, I kept hyper focusing on this, and I was trying to find out as much as I possibly can about Atlantis, right? And through me doing that, I went into a vision, and that's the vision with the obelisk and stuff like that. But there was like a 4-part thing that was happening. One, it was during a time where the planes was falling out the sky. So they showed me how many planes was going to fall. 2, they took me to the obelisk and told me the obelisk needed to be returned. And they took me underground. Spooky. I was like, get me out of here. But then they also took me to this temple. I'd never seen nothing like this before in my life. It was huge, like huge. And I seen some pyramids off to the side. And as I'm like flying towards this thing, it was almost like it opened up for me, and it had 2 crystal doors that were like blue, like a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blue. I don't know like what even type of blue to describe it, like blue like the ocean. And it's like as I got closer, I felt like it was opening for me. And because I tried to like look to the side and see what else I could see around, I came out of it, right? So that now I understand is the Crystal Flame Temple. And I have a lot of memories in this temple. So I'm just going to share a couple of things about it, just in case y'all have seen it before in y'all dreams, because like I said, it's a frequency I can tap into, but it's also a frequency you can tap into, right? If you hold the right light, if you hold the right level of remembrance, okay? So it was made of sand, and it was very intricately structured. I don't know how a human could have made this, if that makes sense. Like, there's no way. But it was made of sand, but it was sparkly in a way. Like, I feel like it was sparkly in a way, and it had the 2 crystal doors. Now, the material of this place, the outer structure appears to be sand-like, but it's not ordinary sand. It shimmers with like this golden mica and soft rose quartz dust, because it kind of looks like sandy, but it has like pinkish, like a pinkish look to it. Anyways, it is lightweight, but it's indestructible. And it's almost like it's alive. It was formed from a sacred fusion of earth and crystal dust compressed with frequency rather than force. Okay. The color and the light, by day, the temple appeared like goldish beige color. And I saw it in the daytime, but when she was actually leaving Atlantis, I saw it at night, and it shines. Okay. But in the daytime, it appears to be like golden beige, and it's glowing with internal light. At night, it shimmers like an opaline color, as though it's made of stardust. Like it looks like it's made of like stardust at night. Okay. It has the 2 crystal doors, or the 2 blue crystal doors. And these are massive. I'm talking about huge, and they thick too. Like they really, really, really thick. And they're glowing. They're carved from this rare deep blue crystal, which is either blue sapphire quartz, or it's a crystalline form of Lemurian aquamarine. To me, it looks like a blue aqua quartz, in a way. Okay. These doors were gateways of consciousness encoded with sound frequency, and they only open to those who hold a matching heart resonance and had been purified in waters of inner sanctum or carried the flame glyph. So in my vision, these doors, like I said, started to open for me, and I was looking around trying to see what it was that I could see around, and then I came up out of it. Okay. And I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about that in a second when I talk about the day that she left Atlantis, because I just think it's important. Now, inside this temple, there is a central flame altar where the crystal flame crystal sits. It hovers. kind of in the center. It's not burning like fire, but it's like glowing with this golden pink light that pulses with intelligence. Okay. I don't know if you guys ever seen the show The 100, but you know how like stuff pulses in that show. It kind of is like that. The inner sanctum is quiet, is circular, and is filled with spiraling symbols on the walls that move when you speak to them in sacred tongue. It kind of looks like hieroglyphs in a way. Okay. And then it has pools of liquid light surrounding the chamber, used for healing and remembrance and transmitting codes to other priestesses across grids. And then there's also these guardians of this crystal flame temple. And they are protectors, but not by force, but by frequency. They're seraphic beings. The dolphins in the waters below as well are protectors and guardians. And then you have crystal centennials that stand watch. And then Amara has a royal guard, which we'll talk about next time. But they're of the crystal flame order. And so they stand in between the inner and outer rings, especially during ceremonies and planetary alignments. Okay. So this temple still exists in the etheric realm, but it has to be reached through the dream state. Okay. Now, the crystal flame crystal is, like I said, the main crystal and temple. And the crystal flame crystal was said to be one of the most sacred sources of Atlantis. It was a sentient, living crystal being that held the frequency of divine fire. So divine fire is what we would consider to be the original source spark encoded in light and sound. Okay. So it wasn't just a stone, it was an energetic key. Flame refers to its eternal connection to divine consciousness, and it was in its most pure and unfiltered state. It was pure and unfiltered source energy is what this crystal flame contained. And understand that a crystal is just the body. It's not there's a consciousness inside of the body. Every single consciousness that descends into form needs a vehicle. This is my vehicle, okay? But my consciousness is what's inside of this body. I'm not the body. The same with crystals. There's a consciousness, a living sentient being that lives inside the crystal. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And that living crystal being or sentient being that lived inside the main crystal flame crystal was pure, unfiltered source energy. Okay. So crystal, like I said, refers to the vessel, but this vessel, the crystal flame that we're talking about, was highly evolved quartz. Hold on, y'all. Y'all know they be having me do these little puzzle thingies. So the crystal, the vessel, was a highly evolved quartz or a multi-dimensional mineral matrix capable of holding infinite light codes. So what you need to understand is that everything in this reality is conscious, okay? Everything is conscious. Everything that is conscious has a vessel, which means that this cup is the body for a consciousness. This body for my consciousness. This book, the body for a consciousness. Okay? Everything has a body and it has a consciousness. You are looking at the body in physical form, but you're not looking at the consciousness. Okay? Now, this crystal was believed to anchor the frequency of divine will and alchemic transformation. It powered Atlantean healing temples, particularly those related to heart and soul transmutation. It served as a bridge between the sun temples, the crystal grids, and the Stargate portals, and it contained the sacred geometry of the eternal flame, a symbol of the unbroken covenant between earth and source. So you can imagine pure, unfiltered source power. Why somebody who has entered into their ego would want to have control over this. And they did a lot to do it. They did a lot to Amara to try to gain control over this energy. I thought what she did was brilliant. Okay. Where is this crystal now? I'm going to tell you some options, and I'm going to tell you what I remember. Okay. Because I have a memory from this day. Okay. It is hard to tie it down because there are multiple timelines going at once. But here's some options. One, which I feel a lot hidden in inner earth. Okay. It was hidden in inner earth. Some say the crystal flame crystal was moved during the fall of Atlantis to the Temple of Light in inner earth, possibly beneath Mount Shasta, the Himalayas, or submerged in a crystal chamber near the Azores. And the Azores are those underwater volcanoes that look like islands, but they're really volcanoes, so nobody lives there. Okay. Another option is that they were fragmented in star seeds. So people believe that she shattered the crystal, the core of the crystal, in a controlled way, and fragments were placed in the hearts of certain beings, star seeds, light workers, and crystal children, to keep its code safe until a time for reawakening became. For third option, dormant in the ocean. Another version speaks of a crystal flame still resting in an Atlantean outpost under the sea, protected by the dolphins and octopus type people. Setian consciousness, veiled from human sight by energetic codes. And then the fourth one is on the etheric plane. It may also exist on a higher dimensional plane, only visible or accessible through astral travel, lucid dreaming, or heart resonance, especially those aligned with Amara in the temple of the sacred flame. Okay. Now, that's not what. I hope this is not a whole nother live. That would be crazy. Okay. YouTube. Can you hear me, YouTube? I'm so sorry. I kicked out my yeah, I'm back. Okay. I kicked out my okay, thank you, Shiki. I kicked out my cord, y'all, so I apologize. I am back. You did not miss anything. I just needed to get y'all back up. I can hear you on YouTube. Okay, good. Okay. Let me figure out where the hell I was. Because okay, we talked about that. Okay, we talking about the crystal flame crystal, okay? Where is it now? Last I heard, that's not what I remember. Okay. What I remember, and I thought that this was at the time where I was having these memories, I didn't know what I was seeing. I thought it was something happening to me. I just knew that it was weird as fuck. Okay. And what I remember was being in a room, and this room was lit up in a way. It's like I almost could see like a purple light coming from somewhere else. Okay. And I was in this room and I was kind of hunched over and I held a crystal in my hand, but it wasn't a big crystal. It looked like the core of a crystal. Okay. And with my thought, I made this into really, really tiny pieces. Like I was confused in a dream because I was like, crystals are hard. Like I'm thinking in my head, crystals are hard. How could I split this into all these pieces at one time? But it split in a very mechanical way. Like it was almost like I knew how to cut it. I don't fucking know how to explain it. Okay. But it went into several different shards in my hand and I swallowed it. Okay. So rightfully so, somebody who does not know what she's seeing, I jumped out of the dream and I said, what the fuck did I just swallow? I thought something, you're not supposed to drink nothing or swallow nothing in a dream. But remember, I just told y'all a couple minutes ago, I did not realize what it means to be a seer. A seer. I was seeing the truth of the situation because I kept going there. I kept asking, right? So I saw what was happening. I didn't know what was happening because my mind took a second for my mind to catch up with what I now understand. Okay. So I seen her with her mind make it into all these perfect little pieces. And then she swallowed it. Okay. Then I went back to sleep and I go right back into whatever this is. And I am on the water. I don't know how I know I'm on the water, but I know I'm on the water. I don't know if I'm walking on the water. I don't know if I'm in a boat. I just assume with my logical mind that I'm on a boat or something. And what catches my eye is I look next to me and I could see the room that I was in. And it's a huge circular sphere crystal that's violet. The whole room was this beautiful, beautiful, like pinkish purple color. And I could see the thing that I was just close to. Now I'm on the water moving past it. I'm moving away from it. And I feel like I'm going somewhere before somebody comes back. But when I initially broke the crystal into all these pieces, somebody was in the room with me and it was a feminine energy. And for some reason, I feel like she was my best friend or something. Okay. I wasn't scared for her to see it. I wanted to leave before somebody came back. I didn't feel like I was being kidnapped or held captive or anything, but I felt like I needed to do this quietly. And it wasn't a lot of people that I could trust. Okay. Then I see myself moving past the water, and that room catches my attention because it's that purple color again. And I look, and it's this gorgeous, huge circular crystal, which I now understand to be the violet flame crystal, because we had all these different crystal temples, right? That was the violet flame crystal. Gorgeous, 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 the whole room. And what I could see is that the room wasn't closed. You could see the sky from the top of the room, like meaning like you could see the stars from the top of the room, but you also can see through the room because it was like arches. So like the crystal is in the center, and then behind the crystal, you could see this arch, and I could see directly out to the water behind it, but it's midnight. But I know that it's water on that other side. Don't ask me how. I just know. Okay. So that's what I saw. And so what led to my remembering was I was watching a Kotita Dean. She does the walk with the ancestors. I think she's like, comes from the solar flame, because she talks a lot about Yehuda. Okay. I am watching her episode, and she is channeling one of these deities, one of these beings, and she keeps saying the 144,000 have crystals in them, and the people are trying to collect the crystals like Thor rings. She said something like that. And when she said that, I knew that that was true. Like I knew that that is what I had witnessed. Okay. I knew that that's what I had witnessed. And she said that, I would say probably 3 days after I had that vision that I did not understand. Like 3 days later. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? And then it clicked. It all just clicked into form. Okay. So I think what she did is what a lot of oversouls did at that time, is they fragmented things, because you don't want to put it in one person, because if they catch that one person, it's all gone. So what they did is they fragmented versions of themselves to be in a lot of different us, right? Because if you have a fragment of an oversoul that can hold high vibrational light, you can hold one of these crystals. Okay. So they fragmented themselves into star seeds, light beings, crystal children, right? And then they also fragmented the crystals to go into different bodies, because if it's spread out, when the grid comes online, they can't catch all 144,000. So when the grid starts to activate, we start to activate. And I think that's happening right now. And that's why so many of us are having these oceanic dreams, and so many of us are having these things happen. Remember, I am not Amara. I hold her memory. Okay. When I just went through my 33rd soul embodiment, I am embodying an aspect of her energy called Ma'aranai. She is the next chapter. She is not supposed to go back and redo any of those things. She was made out of Amara's regret. Okay. Okay. That is what I think happened. Now, I will also say this in addition to my entire life, I felt like something was in the Bermuda Triangle that was causing these things. And for some reason, I've always said that there has to be a crystal sitting on the bottom of that floor. And every time that the light hits that crystal, refracts that crystal, it moves people into different dimensions. I don't think it disintegrates them or anything like that. I think they go into a different dimension. That's why we don't find a boat or a plane or a this, right? And how sometimes planes go missing over there when the thunderstorms is happening, the lightning. Okay. However, I now believe that it is some type of portal, Atlantean portal that is there. And that is why our governments are fighting over it right now. I think it's an actual Stargate. I think it's a Stargate. I don't think it's this crystal like I thought it was this crystal. Because when I started having that thought, that's when I had the vision of like, no, this is what it is. This is what you need to see. Okay. This is what you need to see. So when people say, oh, they're trying to program you through your dreams, I have a vision about what that looks like. When people say, oh, they're trying to contact you in your dreams, I have a vision of what that looks like. So sometimes y'all trigger me into a vision and I see the truth of something because I'm a soul mirror. I told y'all that before. I'm a soul mirror. You say something to me, I can reflect back the truth. And I do that through my visions, which I did not know was visions until yesterday. I just was thinking weird shit was happening to me. And I don't understand why every time somebody says something, all of a sudden it's happening to me in my dream. It's because I'm a soul mirror. Okay? A living scroll. A living memory point. A lot of y'all are too. Y'all just don't know. Okay, and that's the whole purpose of this. Like I'm saying, I'm not better than anybody else, or I'm not claiming to be better than anybody else. It's just we all have our own roles. Okay, so with the new content and stuff that I have coming out and the new stuff that I'm putting together, like human design, I'm redoing it to figure out what your soul alignment is. I'm gonna start doing flame lineage readings. Okay, so I can figure out where you come from and stuff like that. But I need to set the foundation so that you can understand what I'm talking about or why any of this is even important that I'm talking about this. And that's what I'm doing through these Wednesday sessions. Okay. So I'm working on that right now. Just give me some time and I'll get it together, because what I've started doing after my 33rd gateway is I started being able to tell what lineages people come from. I don't know why. I don't know how. I can talk to people and I'm like, oh, you're here. Oh, you're there. Okay. And I think it's important. Okay. So that's what I remember. Now, the crystal flame crystal was way too powerful, like I said, to be put in one place after the fall. So I think she consciously divided it and fragmented it, not in destruction, but in divine design. And I think that the 144,000 soul aligned priests and guardians and healers and wisdom keepers were chosen from the 12 soul lineages or the 12 temples. The 12 disciples, the 12 is a specific, 12 is an important number. There were 12 soul lineages. I think that that's what happened. And each carry a piece of the original flame within their heart or their light body. Why they heart and they light body? Because ego-driven people don't think that their heart space is useful, so they skip it. That's why they lack empathy, because that's the only place that you can actually get empathy. So she hid it in a place where they have no access to because they've decided not to. They decided to be dim their soul. And I ain't gonna say soulless being, because your soul doesn't ever really go away. You just dim your flame so that they can't reach that space. So she put it exactly where they could not see it. They could not reach it. The bitch was thinking. She was on 10. They was on 0. She was thinking big. They was thinking small. Okay. So each carried a piece of the original flame within their heart or their light body, and a spark of the original crystal encoded with light codes, harmonic tones, and sacred geometry. Their mission was to reincarnate across timelines and lifetimes, anchoring light, reawakening the grid, and remembering who they are when the earth was ready to rise again. Which means that a lot of us have lived multiple lives. When they say that you ancient, what they mean is you kept incarnating until earth was ready. You keep coming back until earth is ready. Okay? These priestesses may not all be women. Some have chosen masculine embodiment or non-binary embodiment. Let me stop you for a second. I was trying to talk to my ancestors. I was really into ancestor veneration. I don't know nothing about my ancestors because I feel like we was never really, I knew who my great grandparents were, but outside of that, I don't know nothing. Right. And we didn't really talk about that. You know, I know on my grandmother's side, we in the Book of Rose, and we had a Native American princess who was sold into war to the white men. I know about that. I know about my grandma, my mom's dad's side, living on reservations their whole life, but I didn't know the details of anything, right? So when I was in ancestor veneration, I had a dream, which was not a dream, but my guardian that was taking me, it was like I was going down this dark road that had no streetlights, and it was like a hill, and we were in the car, and whoever was driving me was a psychopath, meaning like they were living life to its fullest. And they was like, wee, and I'm like, where's my phone? Like, what? Slow down. And we were going down into this dark, like it was like a dark hill, and we were going straight down a dark hill. The higher self, whatever, I don't even know if it was my higher self. For some reason, it felt like it was one of my ancestors, but it was a trans woman. It was a trans woman, non-binary. Do you know what that told me that day? Is that we focused on the wrong shit. I think people are supposed to come here and live whatever life makes them happy. And I think that gender is supposed to be fluid. I don't think gender is supposed to be one or the other, one extreme to the other. It's not supposed to be that way. It's not. We make shit hard because we always in somebody else's fucking business. Okay? I get down to the bottom of this hill and I see my car parked on this porch. And I run into a mailbox. The mailbox said Frankie. Okay? This lady comes outside. She's running outside, dark-skinned black lady. She's like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I'm like, I don't even know where I am. The person who brought me there, gone. Now, at that time, I was asking my guides and my ancestors to walk with me. I'm like, walk with me in the dream realm, guide me to where I'm going. Because at that time, I was shooting myself all different type of places, right? So this was a guardian, this was an ancestor, this was a spirit guide. Very fluid in their gender. Gorgeous, by the way. Gorgeous. You know who they remind me of? Have you ever seen Grownish? The trans woman on Grownish? Like that type of fine, right? So as soon as I get to where I'm going, they disappear. And then Frankie walks out of the door up towards me. And Frankie looks at me and says, "No." And I said, "No, what?" And he was like, "No, I'm not interested." He walks away and he leaves. I know for a fact that that is one of my ancestors and that he did not want to be bothered. That's why I tell y'all, not every single ancestor that you want to connect to wants to connect to you. And they don't have to. They still have free will. They still have sovereignty. He like, "What you coming around here messing with me for? You done crashed into my mailbox. What's going on?" No, I don't want nothing to do with that. Okay? So they don't have to be feminine energies. Sometimes they choose masculine embodiments or they choose non-binary roles, depending on their soul's journey and what would allow them to best serve under the energy that they're supposed to serve underneath. Okay? Each fragment is alive and it holds a unique frequency. It has a specific tone. It has a specific memory. It holds a specific key. Okay? It resonates with a location or purpose. So some are connected to the water. Others are connected to sound. Others are connected to divine will or healing. And it is dormant until activated by soul remembrance, frequency resonance, or divine timing. Meaning there's going to come a time where regardless it's going to activate if that's the time for it to activate. It also comes through you remembering enough, which comes from you frequency resonance. You raising your vibration enough to hold enough light. Because you got to think that crystals refract energy. They transmute energy. You're an energy transmuter. You're a frequency tuner. Okay? So when the 144,000 reunite, we awaken and vibrate the crystal codes again, which is what you call flame reform. The flame is going to reform, not as a physical object anymore, but as a planetary field of divine intelligence. This is called the return of the crystal flame, the dawn of the golden frequency, or the awakening of the rose grid. So when I say it takes all of us, that's what I mean. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a goal. Everybody is needed. So we need to stop fighting each other, start doing the work, healing ourselves. And those who are meant to come along will come along. But there's only 144,000 of us that are real beings, that are beings who hold enough light to bring back this energy. Not saying that other beings are soulless, okay? Not all of them. Some of them are soulless, but not all of them are soulless. Some of them have just dimmed their light so much that it ain't nothing we could do to help them right now. Okay? So how do you know if you tapped into the Atlantean frequency? Okay? You feel deeply connected to water, to dolphins, to crystals, to pyramids, or sacred geometry. You carry a longing for home that feels ancient and otherworldly, meaning like you don't feel like you're from here, right? You've had dreams or visions of temples, oceanic realms, meaning you underwater breathing, or being a part of a golden society, because Atlantis was a golden society. Okay. You're drawn to rebuild something more heart aligned in this life, as if healing a wound from that time. I don't know about y'all, but my whole entire life, I have felt like everybody was doing it wrong. I legitimately came in here and said, y'all are doing love wrong. I don't know what it is that's going with y'all, but this is not love. This is abuse. And then I never harden my heart for anybody. I will always say, I don't care how people treat me. I'm not going to change the way that I love just because you don't see it. I've always played the peacekeeper role. I've always been the peacekeeper. I'm always trying to unite people and bring people together. I'm always trying to solve everybody's fucking problems. Always. So much so that I ended up miserable. I ended up miserable, which led me to my healing journey, which led me back to myself, which led me to remembrance. Sometimes it's all part of it, because you remember what I said from the previous episodes. Trauma and pain is a catalyst to your spiritual awakening. It is your initiation. It is a portal that you're meant to walk through. That's why you can't sit in that grief. You got to figure out where to put it. I was a fixer for real. I was trying to fix everything, trying to tell everybody how to show up and how to treat me and all these things, when all I needed to do was fix myself and stop trying to fix them. Okay? Atlantis did not disappear. It dispersed into water, into memory, into people. And now its frequency is rising again, not to be repeated, but to be rebirthed from a wiser standpoint. So that's why I'm doing this, because you got to know what happened so that we don't repeat what happened. Because there are powers that would like us to believe that we're repeating right now. They're liars. They're liars. Everything you see on TV is for entertainment. It's meant to entertain you. But if you believe it, then you create it. It's for entertainment, though. That march that they doing with all them flags, and you don't see no police officers, but the Make America Great Again, they got those. Those are police officers. Those are military officials, and you cannot tell me otherwise. Allegedly. That's why you got to listen to your body and not what you see and not what you hear, because that seems staged to me. They're trying to get you angry. They're trying to get you angry because they need you to create the reality. That's why I said unplug from the TV. They're lying. They're entertaining you. Those are hired actresses. Y'all don't believe me. Y'all might not believe me. But I'm telling you. Okay, so what do you need to understand about Atlantis? Atlantis was vibrational. It was not just a city that fell. It was a frequency that fractured. It was not just a place. It was a multi-dimensional network. Okay? It spanned across multiple realms. It was physical. It was etheric. It was oceanic. It was crystalline. And it was celestial. Exactly, Russell. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Operatives. Okay. It existed on Earth, yes, but it also partially existed in a fifth dimensional resonance where the crystal consciousness could operate without distortion. So part of it was physical, but that physical part could operate in separation and polarity. So part of it needed to be on the fifth dimensional plane so that it was free from distortion. Okay. Its cities were light temples, sonic portals, and soul schools. Some were underwater, some were suspended between dimensions. Okay. Atlantis did not sink. It passed out of sync with Earth's frequency because of the misuse and the imbalance. It did not just fall, it kind of imploded from within. And the collapse was not only due to outside forces, but from a vibrational schism within priesthood. They betrayed her. They betrayed her over and over again. Her own people betrayed her. It was almost like, have y'all seen The Wheel of Time? If you have not seen The Wheel of Time on Amazon, they just canceled it on the 25th for season 4, which is crazy. But if you watch A Wheel of Time and you see how in the 3rd season, she was on the right side of history, but all her people turned against her because they wanted power and status. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. It happened from the inside. They wanted access to that pure, unfiltered power. They wanted to play God. Okay? So her own people, she didn't know who to trust. I told you I was in that room and I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know. I just knew I needed to leave before that person came back, whoever it was. Okay? So there was a division between those who upheld the crystal codes of source and those who sought to bend them for control. And when this sacred tech was used to manipulate DNA, open portals, or distort time, the harmonic field cracked. So the reason why we have the firmament, or it had to be realigned, was because when this crack happened, we started leaking energy outwards, and they needed to contain the energy so that it did not. It's almost like how I talk to y'all about y'all energetic field and how sometimes when y'all contract, or when sometimes y'all living in fear, you create weaknesses in your field and your energy starts to leak out. Earth is a body just like you a body. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened to Earth. She started leaking out energy, and all this fear and shame and distorted energy comes in because that, as above, so below. So if y'all have heard me talked about your energetic field around you and how important it is to stay in an expanded state, because you create weaknesses in your field, and that's portals for things to come through that are not aligned with your highest frequency attachments. That's the same thing that happened to Earth. They put the firmament around her to fix it for the time being. Okay. The temple of the crystal flame was sealed before this occurred by beings like Amara and others who encoded keys into soul lineages, meaning they put everything in us because they knew there would become a time where we would rise again in frequency. Why? Because Earth had to, on her evolutionary path. She had to. So they've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for that to happen. And so that's why they're talking about the new Earth. It's not a new Earth. We're still going to be on the same Earth. We're just going to be at a higher frequency, higher harmonic energy. Okay. The Atlantean soul groups are reincarnated right now. So many who were there have returned at this time. Okay. Some are waking up slowly through dreams, through water, through frequency and art. Others are still playing out their karmic roles, both the light bearers and the shadow tech builders. Okay. The 144,000 flame holders, dolphin guardians, and crystalline voice carriers are here again, and they are reconnecting right now. Okay. Also understand that the technology in Atlantis was conscious, and it still exists. It was a consciousness, because everything that you create has its own consciousness. It takes on its own consciousness. So you know how they talked about AI and how AI was starting to become sentient. It was starting to make decisions for itself. Everything that you create takes on its own consciousness. And at some point, you'll no longer be able to control that consciousness in the same way that you thought that you did. Okay. The crystals were not just tools. They were sentient beings. They were plasmic intelligence housed in crystal form. And some still exist deep in the ocean. Some places like the Bermuda Triangle, Antarctica, the Azores, and the ancient mountain temples. The ancient mountain temples. Okay. Himalayas, the Andes, Mount Shasta. They can only be reawakened by frequency, not force, though. You have to raise your vibration, and only by those who carry the pure remembrance, meaning those who have released their ego and surrendered their ego, those who are living in humility those who are humble, those who are not power hungry. You got to clear the distortion in order for you to gain access. Okay, Atlantis is returning, but not as a civilization. It's returning as a grid of consciousness. This is the rose grid that I was talking about. The rose grid is activating. The crystalline web that I was talking about. The song lines that the dolphins are singing across. These are being activated through sound, through DNA, through water, and sacred embodiment. Okay, you don't have to build Atlantis. You have to embody the frequency it was meant to hold. In your voice, in your relationship, in your creation, in your remembrance. Love, we're not talking about that right now. Okay? Atlantis was not a warning, it was a mirror. And we are here not to fear it, but to correct the resonance. So some of you carry the memory still intact, just waiting to be sung into full coherence. Okay? Why do we care about Lemuria and Atlantis? Because that's what we talked about today. Why do we care? Well, Lemuria was the heart before the mind. Okay. Lemuria was the original divine feminine embodiment grid, a civilization of heart coherence, sacred union, nature communion, emotional telepathy, sound healing, and water memory. It operates in the 5D plus consciousness, where there is no separation between spirit and matter. There were no temples of domination because all of Earth was a temple. Lemuria was soft and fluid and womb-like. It was the primordial Eden. Okay? Atlantis was the bridge between spirit and structure, spirit and matter. Atlantis came after Lemuria, but it did not replace it. Okay? It was taking the next step, which was bringing divine consciousness into form through sacred technology, through structure, through geometry, and through flame. It was the realm of crystalline temples, star navigation, soul architecture, high priestess, flame lineages, and eventually polarity and downfall, because it became a place where ego, imbalance, and artificiality entered. It is where humanity began to forget. Lemuria has already been rising quietly but steadily. The Lemurian frequency has been returning for decades now. And that's why we see this rise in empathy and intuition and emotional healing. The return of the divine feminine voice. So many women are speaking out for themselves. Okay. Sound healing, water rituals, womb work, and plant medicine. Okay. The apothecaries, the move back towards plant medicine instead of pharmaceuticals. Okay. The reconnection of Earth and whales and starkin. It's already weaving beneath our feet, especially in places like Hawaii and New Zealand and Bali and parts of the Pacific Rim. Okay. But Lemuria does not rise in fire. You're not going to see her when she comes. She rises through soft hearts, through safe spaces, and souls who remember love before separation. Atlantis is rising now because it holds the lesson that we must integrate. Okay? We are reaching the same fork in this timeline that we reached in Atlantis. Technology or embodiment, or what I like to call transcendence versus transhumanism. Power versus presence. AI versus the soul. Now, all of these things have a function. They absolutely have a function. But you cannot choose them over your own remembrance, over your own memories. You cannot become dependent on them. It's okay to use them for confirmation, but you cannot become dependent on them to find the answers, because you will become less dependent on your soul. Okay? We must remember what went wrong so that we cannot repeat it, so that we do not repeat it, but restore what was once sacred. Many of us are back, like I said, Amara's Circle, the Flame Holders, the Crystal Weavers, to finally complete what we began. Lemuria prepared our hearts, but Atlantis must awaken our clarity and our discernment and our sovereign flame. We have to have discernment now with the empathy. Okay? So many of us are dreaming of these temples, these crystal gates, these priestess paths, these stargates and ancient flames because we're being activated. Lemuria, like I said, was the heart. Atlantis is the voice. Together they form the new earth template, where remembrance returns in balance. The rise of Atlantis is the return of sacred structure, but it needs to be held in the Lemurian womb. We need compassion. We need love. Eden needs to be reclaimed so that we can have new wisdom and new embodiment and new sovereignty. Eden is the soul. So if Lemuria is the heart, Atlantis is the voice, Eden is the soul. It's the energy we must embody again. Okay? So, do they know? Have they always known about Atlantis? I'm going to say this part, everything that I say right now is for entertainment and it's all alleged. But they've always known about Atlantis. It wasn't a myth, especially those who are embedded in the military industrial complexes, the ancient bloodlines, and the secret technology alliances. They have always known. That's why they have nobody can claim land in Antarctica, and they have a treaty over there at Earth's womb. But they can't let us know because Atlantis was a multi-dimensional civilization that once held the keys to crystalline energy systems, star networks, soul coding technology, quantum consciousness, Earth's original grid, and frequency structure. So they actively hid it. Okay? They started recovering artifacts and sites. So underwater structures near Bimini, the Azores, Antarctica, and even parts of the Indian Ocean, these underwater structures show non-natural geometric and material structures that can't be replicated today. Okay? Some locations are classified military sites or are restricted for conservation because they're hiding access to Atlantean technology or portals. Atlantean crystal technology. Tesla's work and others were reportedly influenced by recovered Atlantean knowledge. Because Tesla's work was what? Free energy. Tesla's work was free energy. How do you harness the energy from the earth? Okay. Some governments have access to crystal resonance devices capable of influencing weather, capable of influencing thought, and capable of influencing timelines. Echoes of the Great Crystal Tower in Atlantis. Okay. Stargates and portals. They know that Atlantis was a hub for interstellar diplomacy, and its temples were frequency locked portals. Certain high-ranking factions are working to open and control these stargates, hence the interest in the deep ocean trenches, in the volcanic zones, Hawaii, and ancient grid points. And in the prophecies, they've studied the same Atlantean prophecies to say, or that say, when the flame bearers rise, the grid will fall and the crystalline age returns. They've studied that. They've done everything to try to delay it. They can't stop it, but they tried to delay it. Okay? This is why there's an increase in surveillance and soul suppression and distractions, because they know that the 144,000 are awaking. So why hide it? Well, for control. Atlantis held the keys to free energy, to soul sovereignty, and multidimensional healing. It threatens the very system of dependency and profit that we live with right now. For fear, misuse of Atlantean technology led to its fall, so some of the same souls are incarnated right now to either redeem or repeat. So some of those same people that betrayed are here right now. Okay? but also timeline manipulation, because knowledge of Atlantis allows you to influence which future unfolds. This is why certain groups attempt to redirect collective memory and suppress ancestral recall. So, a big reason of why I tell you this is because if you know what happened, you can consciously choose another avenue. That's why they can't tell you. Don't you worry. Dun 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 dun. Don't you worry. Okay? So the only history that we have of Atlantis is in Plato's writing. Okay? I think it's called Timaeus or something like that. Okay? And the reason being is because it was scrubbed intentionally. The truth of Atlantis was not only hidden, it was veiled, it was distorted and fragmented on purpose, because if we remembered, we will remember humanity's original sovereign blueprint, that we are sovereign souls. Nobody can tell us what to do. No man is greater than us. Okay? Our ability to live in divine harmony with Earth and the stars. The crystalline technology, the Stargate access, and the soul power we once wielded, and how it was all nearly lost when we fell out of harmony with ourselves. If we understood that, we would do something differently, because that was the good life. That was the good life. So they scrubbed it to maintain control, because it disrupts religious control systems by showing a pre-biblical, multidimensional humanity. It undermines colonial histories by exposing lost advanced civilizations not based on war. Not based on war. It threatens, because they always try to tell us, well, we come from this animalistic primal instinct people who used to tear each other alive just for the sake of tearing each other alive. That is not true. But if you think you come from animalistic instincts, you are more accepting of the fact that you have those instincts. Oh, you think that's how you're supposed to be? Y'all see my cat? Isn't she a cutie? Anywho. Okay. It threatens scientific orthodoxy by proving the existence of energy-based, conscious-driven technology. Thank you, Smiley. It reawakens ancient lineages who carry flame codes and memory and freedom. So they silenced it because it works against those who wish to replace organic memory with synthetic stories. They wrote themselves into our history. I already told y'all that. They wrote themselves into our history. Okay? They was not even around when Atlantis was around. Atlantis was full of melanated beings. Melanated beings. Y'all don't hear me though. Plato was not the first. He was a gatekeeper. Plato's story in the Timaeus, and I think it's Critias, is based on accounts from Solon. And Solon was a Greek priest and lawmaker who traveled to Egypt around 600 BCE. And the priest told him, "You Greeks are but children. You know nothing of the great flood, nor the many times mankind has risen and fallen." And he was talking about Lemuria, and he was talking about Atlantis, okay? This referenced a continent beyond the Pillar of Hercules, now known as the Strait of Gibraltar, a civilization that fell in a single day and night. Plato was preserving what he could, but he also encoded it in a format that the ruling class would allow to pass. So that's where we get philosophical fiction from. He had to say it was fiction in order for us to be able to preserve it at all, because Plato was a philosopher, and philosophers are basically historians in a way, right? So he preserved it in the only way that he could, and that's why that's the only remnants of it, is because he called it philosophical fiction. His writings were not the beginning, though. They were the last allowed echo in public discourse. Other mentions that were silenced, burned, or hidden, okay, were preserved in Egyptian temple texts, which were lost or sealed, Mayan codices, burned during the conquest, indigenous oral traditions across the Polynesian, African, and Americas, esoteric writings like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which were coded but often distorted, mystery schools where initiated carried the memory in ritual, sound, and symbol. Okay. But most of these were either destroyed in the Library of Alexandria, the Mayan temples, the Sophia scrolls, hidden in plain sight as allegories, myths, or scripture. A lot of those are the stories of Atlantis, but they sound magical. Okay. Or kept alive through soul memory, dream space, and energy fields, which we are now remembering now. Okay. The fall, though, itself created a frequency scar. When Atlantis fell, it created a collective trauma in the human field. And this trauma led to a split between the heart and the mind. Okay. What was once unified went into separation. Okay. So now our heart and our mind are two separate consciousness when they used to work together, when they're supposed to work in coherence. Okay. A distrust of spiritual power and feminine wisdom. Okay. Because the feminine wisdom was the leaders of Atlantis. Amara chose compassion and mercy. She thought that if she anchored in the frequency and just kept holding the frequency, that it would correct itself when she could have did something about it. That's her biggest regret. That's the grief that we feel. She could have fixed it, but she didn't. She held the frequency because she thought the frequency was enough. It wasn't. Okay. But also a planetary amnesia spell, which was activated by fear, by grief, and by distortion. And so the memory of Atlantis was not just erased from the history books, but it was buried in the human nervous system. It exists inside of us. That's why we know that it's there. That's why we've always talked about it. We talking 200,000 years later, we're still talking about it. Why? Because it lives inside of you. So every time we remember a temple or a crystal flame or the soul council, or the song that sang the grid into balance, we are rewriting the distortion. So again, I point you back to the TV show, A Wheel of Time. They said, do you remember the song? Do you remember the song? It was a song that's supposed to fix everything. And y'all think they don't know? Come on now. Come on. Okay. So that's today's lesson. Next time, we're going to talk all about Amara. Okay. All about Amara. We probably still are going to be talking about Atlantis because, again, Atlantis cannot just be summed up to 2 hours. No way. There's still more to discover. Okay. But next time we're going to go into Amara because I want y'all to understand what role that she played and what she was capable of doing and how she kind of lived her life, because I think it's important for us to understand that. Okay. So I have some questions in the Soul Tribe tier on from the Patreon. Okay. So someone said, if I've been feeling extremely connected to Earth since you started this series, but also find myself feeling in the air, stars, and space, is it possible for me to be connected to both, or is that airness from me being a Gemini? If you feel extremely connected, it's okay. You can have multiple flames. You don't have to just have one. You can have a solar flame and a lunar flame. Lunar flame is going to be more from the stars. Solar flames is going to be more ancestral. We are spirit and matter. Atlantis was the frequency of both being connected. Okay, so it's just that one, it outweighs the other. You know what I'm saying? You have one root flame, but then you have all these other aspects of your flame as well. Like me, I have a silver blue flame. I have a pale violet flame. I have a rose gold flame. I have multiple different flames. Okay. There are people who I feel like are more like the boomers who incarnate under one flame energy, but there also are people who incarnate under two, or I would say 2 to 3, which is a little bit more rare, but the rarest is 5+. Okay. So some of y'all have 5+. It just depends on what mission y'all carry. I have A lot. I have a lot of them. Which makes sense of why my energy feels so fucking intense all the time. I've always been afraid of my power. I've always been afraid of my energy because it feels like a lot of energy is in my body. It's always felt like that. So I've always been very reluctant when it comes to fighting or when it comes to defending myself and stuff like that, because my energy just feels insane. It's like a lot to carry, I feel like. The next question is if trauma, pain, and grief are part of an initiation, does everyone have to experience this? I'm thinking about crystal, rainbow, and indigo children. Yes. Well, not everybody, because that's not the only way to be initiated. So let me not say that. That's not the only way to be initiated, but that's a catalyst that most people are going to go through because we live in a realm of distortion that is pushing us towards pain, grief, and trauma. We're being exposed to trauma all the time. One of the activation points for me was George Floyd's death. That started me on this path of healing. I felt so much grief when I seen that video. So much grief. I felt like I was going to throw up. And I went and I protested and I walked into the protest and I started profusely crying. I didn't even know I was crying. I could feel how heavy the energy was, and it didn't feel like I was just crying for those people who were there. It felt like I was crying from my soul. I couldn't take it no more. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with people? That's how I felt. And I was sick for days. It's like my soul was just could not rest. And I was like, no, I got to do something. Something has to be done. And then I went, like I told you, I went to the protest and they were just shooting at us with rubber bullets and other people was breaking into stores. And I'm just standing there with my mom and I'm looking around at all this havoc. And I'm just like, this is not going to none of this is working. None of it. I felt like I was stuck in the middle of, it's like I understand the rage. I understand the rage because I too, y'all, when I get stuck on something, I am a maniac, so I understand the rage, but I understand, and I also understand the fear part of it as well, because our rage is very sacred. We shake the room with our rage. It's like I understand everything that's happening, but we just doing it wrong. We just doing it in a way that I'm just like, I know that there's another way. And so when I see stuff like that, it's just like, it fucks me up. So to answer your question, Laura, trauma and pain and grief is not the only way to be initiated. But it is a way that most common we are initiated as black and brown people, because we got thick fucking heads. And also we're constantly being traumatized and pushed towards grief and stuff like that. And it's not doing what they think that it's doing. The George Floyd situation tore me up too, girl. I was not the same. Hey, Sonia. I was not the same. I was not the same. That shit, like, it tore me up. But I'm for some reason, I feel like it had to happen, though, because you remember that The Simpsons did an episode before that happened of the George Floyd thing. Let's talk about that for a second. They have something called the looking glass, and it's a crystal that shows them different timelines, but they can't see past 2033. They can't see past 2033. And that's because that's where the new Earth frequency stabilizes. Okay. So they can manipulate timelines using this looking glass because they like, if I do this, what'll happen? If I do that, what'll happen? And I feel like The Simpsons, it's not that they are guessing the timelines or that they have control over. It's not as sinister as we think it is. They have ancient technology and they're using that to figure out what avenue to take, but they cannot see past 2033. So they're doing things to delay the process. And they put it out for us to see so that we help them create that timeline. But it's not as sinister as you think it is. As somebody who was down the conspiracy train head first, I knew it held some truth to it, like I know what they say holds some truth to it. They decorate the truth with a lot of falsehoods. So you can't tell, but your body can tell. I can tell. Most of y'all are seers, but y'all so distracted in your day-to-day life, y'all don't even know it. You need to pay attention to your dreams because your dreams are going to tell you. But the problem is now they're trying to reach you in your dreams because they can't reach you in the physical world. Which, A Wheel of Time. Look back, watch the show if you have not watched the show. There's so much truth to that. So much truth. So much truth. You need to write your dreams down because sometimes you're dreaming for other people. Some of y'all are prophets. So sometimes y'all dream for other people. You know, sometimes you dream for yourself, though. You get clarity through your dreams. Sometimes you meet your guides and you initiate it through your dreams. Dreams are so important. They're so important. Okay. I'm going to talk about dream protection in my course June 1st, which is this Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to talk about how you dream, how you travel across the ley lines and the distortion loops they put there, how to protect yourself. Join it if you haven't already. It's available on my website, www.bigtajwith2js.com. But so many of you are having dreams right now, so it's important to know how to protect yourself in those dreams. We're going to talk about oils. We're going to talk about crystal grids to put around your bed. We're going to talk about dream catchers. We're going to talk about some intentions that you can set before you go to bed. We're going to talk about dream journals. We're going to talk about all of that. We're also going to talk about how to protect yourself in the physical because we used to be ritualistic in Atlantis. Everything that we did was in a ritual type of fashion. Anointing ourselves before we wake up. Protecting our sacred centers. So we got to talk about some of these things. And as we continue on with this Atlantis series, things might get a little unstructured here just because it's a lot of different things to cover. It's a lot of different things that I want to talk about. So I want to talk about Amara, that type of stuff. But then I think we're just going to talk about some little random isolated things because I want to put together a whole cohesive picture. And I'll start taking questions and tapping into those questions, looking into those things for y'all. Okay. But I'm putting together soul lineage readings so I can tell y'all where y'all come from and what flames y'all hold. So I can do some mentorship specifically around soul lineages. Okay. Instead of doing this 6-month, membership that I'm doing right now, even though I think I'm going to still do that because I think that's really good for shadow work. People at the beginning of their journey, what I'm doing in mentorship right now, I think that's really, really important. So what I want to do is do a course and y'all can purchase the course and y'all kind of work at your own pace. And then every week I host 2 sessions where you can come in and ask questions. Just because I think that'll help more people get access. But then I also want to do mentorship where it's 3 to 6 months, get you in alignment with your soul. Okay, streamline the process a little bit. I also I'm redoing human design according to flame lineages, what it means from you from a soul level. And I'm going to offer those readings as well because it's important. We have to put some of this stuff in practice because if we can put it into practice, we're better together than we are apart. Okay, I'm in class. I'm taking holistic healing. Oh, that's good. But also listen to yourself. The things that you become curious about, go after them. Listen to your soul. The things that you are curious about, the things that excite you, the things that bring you enjoyment, that is your flame lighting on fire. That is activation. Move towards it. Stop asking everybody else, what do they think? It was not given to them because it wasn't for them. It lit your soul on fire. It lit your flame. It didn't light their flame. Go based off of the feeling instead of based off of the thought. If it feels like something you want to do, do it. Who gives a fuck what your granny thinks? Do it right now too, because there's no time. There is no later. That's an arrogant assumption that we have that there is a later. There is no later. Do it right now. Start the journey right now. Each one teach one. I'm always pushing us towards self-sufficiency. Now I think there's a difference between admiration and imitation. I don't need y'all to be me. I need you to be you. There's a difference between that. Be careful that you're not teetering that line. You shouldn't want to do what I do. You should want to do what you do. You shouldn't want to do what your audience is telling you that they want from you. You should do what you want to do. And if they fuck with you, they'll still be around. I got caught in that loop too, doing what my audience was telling me they wanted from me. And then I ended up miserable or upset or dissatisfied with it because it wasn't getting the results that I thought it was going to get, because all these people are asking me for it. I'm thinking all these people going to engage. That's not how it works. That's why you got to listen to your soul and not other people's projections onto you. Thank you, Simply Ray. And you don't want to compare yourself to anybody else, because you can't do what they do and they can't do what you do. Do what you do well. That's all we need. Stop looking at everybody else's work. What Diamond say? Don't trust nobody work but your own. That has stuck with me my whole entire life. My whole entire life. Don't trust nobody work but your own. Do your own work. It is okay for you to get activated by me, for you to start to remember because of me, for you to enjoy what I do. But you do not have to mimic what I do. That is distortion, mimicry. You need to figure out what you do, what you want to do on a soul level, and do that. Okay? You got this shit. We got this shit. We just got to act like we got this shit. You are the expert for your life. You're the only guide for your life. Go within and get the answers. Stop looking outside of you. Sit with yourself. Get uncomfortable. Look at the versions of yourself that you've been. What did you like about those versions? What didn't you like? Because I done did some bullshit. I ain't even gonna hold you. I'm a fucking mess. Okay? Sometimes I be feeling like playing the game too. You thought I was feeling you? Sometimes I like to tap that ass real quick. Do I like that version of myself? Not really. Okay? It doesn't do what I thought that it was going to do. But it doesn't mean that ain't a version that I've been before. I got to acknowledge her. Acknowledge that exists there so that I can pay attention to when she want to come to the party. So I can put hold on, sis, I got this. Let me do it my way this time. You know, look at the different versions of yourself. What did you like? What didn't you like? Be honest, though. Don't be no liar. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest about who you are and who you've been. Because I think we get caught up in the fact that we feel like that means we a bad person or we this or we that. No, that's not what that means. You can't do nothing about the past. You might as well forgive yourself for it. The only thing you can do something about is what is to come, which means that you need to learn your lesson from that. I didn't really like that I showed up this way. Okay, fine. Next time something like this comes around, I'm going to do it different. It's that simple. It's a difference in choices. Choices are activation keys. They open up different timelines. You cannot do the same thing over and over again and think that your life is going to change. It's not. So if you're used to suppressing or regressing every time somebody offends you and you don't speak your truth and you feel miserable, then you need to speak your truth. The opposite of what you're doing. If every time somebody says something to you, you get stuck in a stage of confusion, then you need to make a choice. It don't matter what choice. Figure it out as you go. Figure out what you're doing right now or what you have been doing in previous relationships, what decision you made, because you made the decision, whether it was to be silent, whether it was to be aggressive, whether it was to cut them tires, you made the decision. Did that get you to where you wanted to be? Yes or no? And then make another decision. Exactly. Don't keep other people peace, keep your peace. Because life is ultimately about self. They tell you don't be selfish because they want you to prioritize everybody else's needs in front of your own. Because if they can externalize you, they can control you. But when you in your power, when you in your light, when you trust on your own guidance, they don't have not one bit of control over you. You know? So forgive yourself for the versions of yourself that you've been. Acknowledge who you've been. Do something differently. Become the version you actually want to be. But you can't become the version you actually want to be if you don't look at who you've been and what decisions you made and decide to make different decisions. Okay, look at the people that you have dated, the people that you came into friendship with, the people in your family. What did you like? What didn't you like? Use that to figure out who get to be around you. The things you liked about them, that's the stuff you're looking for. The stuff you didn't like, set a boundary. Don't wait until it comes in your life to figure out what to do about it. Set a boundary right now so you can be clear about what it is that you actually want. And if it's superficial stuff, you need to try again. That's distortion. Everything is about resonance. Everything is about frequency. Everything is about energy. You need to like the energy of a person before you ever like the external. I understand why we do that, because society has created that dynamic. Now, it's also okay for you to have what you like, though. If that don't look fine to you, that is okay. But you shouldn't want something just because everybody else wants it. Okay? Look at how people make you feel. Even your friends. I had a dream about somebody who I went to college with the other night. And right before I went to sleep, I had anointed myself, and I've been sitting on my porch for like a couple hours while the sun is going down, right? Doing some sun gazing, doing some meditation, that type of thing. And I was talking to myself about divine union and what I actually wanted in relationships. And so when I did this, I went to sleep, and in my dream, spirit brought up somebody I went to college with who I never looked at as a person I wanted to date. Never. However, this person treated me very well, treated me with respect, always was kind to me, always showed up in a specific way. And I realized through that dream that his energy is exactly what I have been looking for, even though he's not the person I want to date. But spirit was showing me what the energy looked like. It's not that you haven't come across the energy, it's that you're not looking in that direction because it didn't meet your superficial ass standards at the time. And so spirit showed me that. And then when I woke up, it was a friend that I've had for years. This person, it doesn't matter what I say to them, it's always me and them against the problem. He holds himself accountable every single time. Every single time. If I come to him and say that I have a grievance, he's sitting there listening to me. I don't look at him in that way either, but that's something I want in relationships though. Me and him have an amazing relationship, goofiest version of myself that I could possibly be, because like with him. And then I thought about a relationship I actually was in and how much he pursued me and how much he made me feel validated in my experience. And if I was upset, he ain't just let me be upset. He was at my motherfucking door. Don't like that. Boundaries. But he was at my door like, hold up, wait a second, let's fix this. I like that part about him. The other shit I didn't like. You take what you like, you leave what you don't. Until you find your fish that has all of those things. If you want salmon, don't go after red snapper. It don't taste the same. Yes, they're both fishes, but is it your fish? So you take all these pieces from these people, you figure out what you like, and then you make your decisions based off of that. Because I guarantee you've seen what you like in somebody, you just wasn't looking at them the way that you wanted to be looking at them. But it doesn't mean that they don't have that thing. For me specifically, I grew up in the hood. Everybody in my family is a hustler in some way, shape, or fashion. That's all I've ever known. But I went to public white schools because we used other people's addresses. So then I also have this side of me that understands how to navigate in those public white institutions, around those people. So I'm kind of like stuck in this weird place where I kind of see from that perspective how you could get ahead, but I also feel so disconnected from myself when I don't have somebody who understands the experience that I had, because I'm kind of caught in between two worlds. So I need I need somebody who understands the experiences of people who live in underdeserving community, because I don't need you to be so fucking privileged that you don't understand where I'm coming from, right? Because then we living in two different worlds. You kind of got to be in the middle. It's almost like them dudes who maybe they had suburban parents, but they played basketball, so they was around hood niggas all day. That's what I need. Okay, I know this because I've tried to look in the other direction. It does not work because you don't understand. You don't understand the simple things that I need you to understand. Because I feel like when you come from the bottom, you look at the world in a completely different way. Your appreciation, your gratefulness, your compassion, your love, your ability to find joy even in those hardships. That shit is different than somebody who didn't have to experience that. Yes, the YMCA Boys and Girls Clubs. Okay, the people who was in AAU, them people, the people who have experienced different elements. I'm not looking for the toxic ones. I'm not worried about the toxic ones. I'm talking about the people who had the same experience as me, because I came from those environments and I'm not toxic. I'm looking for people who had the similar experiences as me. I went to college to multiple people who came from those environments and now are in tech. Now living their best life in San Francisco in tech. Saved up all his money in college. Very, very good man. But he understands, and he has friends that are in that environment, but he not own what they own. Like, I need something like that. Otherwise, I feel so far from myself. I need somebody who actually understands the Black experience through the lens that I've seen it through. And I don't mean you had to live it. You need to understand it. You need to hold space for it. You need to have compassion for people who come from that environment. You know, I know that about myself. So I can't look anywhere else. Okay? I can't look anywhere else. Figure out who you like and who you are and what you want in life, and then go after that. Everything else is going to fall into place. Everything else is going to fall into place. Figure out who you are. Start living that life that you enjoy right now. Start exploring, start trying new things. As you do that, because when you exploring yourself and you trying new things and you finding the things that you like, you want to meet people who like those same things, likely to meet them in the place where the thing is happening. Okay? So if you like art, take a paint and sip class, take an art class. You're likely to meet people who are associated with artists or that realm of people in that place. You know, but you got to explore yourself. You got to do the things that actually bring you joy. And then if you with a partner and you notice that you're doing less and less and less of those things, and your life is becoming more and more about somebody else, then you can stop and be like, hold on, wait a second. You can see it, but if you don't even know who you are, you for anything. You for anything. You have to know who you are, which means you got to explore yourself, which means you got to be honest. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm talking to you, Asia. Maybe I am talking to you. I'm talking to all of us, though. I'm talking to me. You need to explore yourself. You need to figure out who you are. And then you stop compromising. Stop dimming yourself to fit in these spaces that's not for you, because you don't know how to let something go. Everything in this reality is best enjoyed with a sense of detachment. It is not yours forever. Nothing is yours forever. Nothing. Learn how to move. Learn how to navigate. Learn how to let things go. Things are not going to be for you all the time. Okay? That's all I got to say. I got a client in an hour and I got to order some food. So I love y'all. I hope this was helpful. Next week, we're going to talk about Amara. And we'll continue the conversation over Atlantis. This live starts at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That is 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay? Every single Wednesday, same time. It doesn't change. 1 p.m. if you're on the West Coast. If you're Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, East Coast, 4 p.m. Okay. It'll always be posted on my YouTube afterwards. If you want to ask questions, you have to join my Soul Tribe tier in Patreon. I have a spiritual protection class that is focused around the dream realm on Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 Central, 12 Eastern. It is available on my website right now. You don't want to miss it. I love y'all deep. I will talk to y'all later. See ya. Let me exit out of YouTube and y'all.